um, yeah. Um, mm, uh, Hopefully that's better. Um, should no, I guess I still can make my microphone a little bit louder. I guess like this, maybe like this. Um, um, yeah. I. Oh, that's even a little bit too loud, maybe. At some points. All right, we should be all set. Okay. Um, Hello everyone. Um, for anyone visiting the stream for the first time, or maybe watching the stream recording after the fact, my name. Wait, that's not how introduction works. So yeah, let me properly introduce you to myself. My name is Lyss. I'm self-confined god that arrived to this universe to basically learn how to be more creative. Because I'm not very good at it. It's true, but I'm willing to get better, so I became Vtuber to get closer to different types of content and learn from the inside how it is created, as well as to have people to actually judge my efforts. To recap, I'm actually still considering myself to be pretty new to entire VTubing shenanigans. I only started a few weeks ago, and so far, the only things I've been doing is playing games, as majority of streamers do. Today, however, we are going to try something different. I'm not sure what kind of content even is that, or how common or popular it is. But I'm still willing to give it a shot. As you might have seen from the video description and from video title, today we will be reading. I'm sorry. Today we will be reading Artemis Fowl by Eoin Colfer. I guess that's how you pronounce her name. At least I hope. I'm really sorry if I pronounce it wrong. I'm not exactly good at English, so sometimes I can make mistakes. One of the reasons why I want to read on stream is exactly so I can improve. Reading to someone, so someone, maybe, hopefully, will tell me what I am doing wrong. So, yeah. We are basically getting to that part of the stream already. Chances are I won't be able to read an entire book in one stream. I'm quite expecting that. I'm also expecting myself to make many spelling mistakes, so please don't treat this live stream as an audiobook. It might not be a very pleasant listen. But I still would greatly appreciate if you will stay with me to listen to it and provide me with feedback so I can work at myself and hopefully get better. If we won't be able to finish the book in one stream, which I already suspect to happen, and if that happens, then we probably schedule another stream on next week to continue with it. Likely at the same time, at the same day, for everyone's convenience. So, that's the basic gist of it. I'm starting to realize that maybe drinking cold drinks wasn't the best idea. Doing it before stream might be a little bit disastrous. I'm not very smart. Why did I do this to myself? Also, no worries. I'm actually feeling mostly okay. But I'm okay, actually no, I need another second. So, to the credit. This model is made by Catherine Dark Dragon, and it's rigged by I Am Hibachiman. All the artworks at the beginning, at the end, and during Be Right Back sections are also made by Catherine Dark Dragon, and the faint music you might be hearing on the background is DM Docker music. Glass structure purple. Perfectly looped. And since we've been speaking of Be Right Back screen, I will be right back. The beginning of today's stream is certainly far from perfect. Anyways. Okay. Now I'm satisfied with positioning of my microphone and I should be heard loud and clear. At least I believe so. Since I don't have much of a thought what music to put on the background, I guess we will be listening to faint sounds of glass structure for duration of the stream. And let's get to reading. Prologue. How does one describe Artemis Fowl? Various psychiatrists have tried and failed. The main problem is Artemis's own intelligence. He bamboozles every test thrown at him. He has puzzled the greatest medical minds and set many of them gibbering to their own hospitals. There is no doubt that Artemis is a child prodigy. But why does someone of such brilliance dedicate himself to criminal activities? This is a question that can be answered by only one person, and he delights in not talking. Perhaps the best way to create an accurate picture of Artemis is to tell the by now famous account of his first villainous venture. I have put together this report from first-hand interviews with the victims, and as the tale unfolds, you will realize that it was not easy. The story began several years ago. The story began several years ago at the dawn of the 21st century. Artemis Fowl had devised a plan to restore his family's fortune, a plan that could topple civilization and plunge the planet into a cross-species war. He was 12 years old at the time. Chapter 1. The Book. Ho Chi Minh City in the summer, sweltering by anyone's standards. Needless to say, Artemis Fowl would not have been willing to put up with such discomfort if something extremely important had not been at stake. Important to the plan. Sun did not suit Artemis. He did not look well in it. Long hours indoors in front of a computer screen had bleached the glow from his skin. He was white as a vampire and almost as testy in the light of day. "I hope this isn't another wild goose chase, Butler," he said, his voice soft and clipped, especially after Cairo. It was a gentle rebuke. We had traveled to Egypt, on the word of Butler's informant. "No, sir. I'm certain this time. Gungan is a good man." Droned Artemis, unconvinced. Passers-by would have been amazed to hear the large Eurasian man refer to the boy as "sir." This was, after all, the third millennium. But this was no ordinary relationship, and these were no ordinary tourists. They were sitting outside a curbside cafe off Donkey Street, watching the local teenagers circle the square on mopeds. Nguyen was late, and the pathetic patch of shade. Nguyen was late, and the pathetic patch of shade provided by the umbrella was doing little to improve Artemis's mood. But this was just his daily pessimism. Beneath the sulk was a spark of hope. Could this trip actually yield results? Would they find the book? It was too much to hope for. A waiter scurried to the table. "More tea, sirs?" he asked, head bobbing furiously. Artemis sighed. "Spare me the theatrics and sit down." The waiter turned instinctively to Butler, who was, after all, the adult. "But, sir, I am the waiter." Artemis tapped the table for attention. "You are wearing handmade loafers, a silk shirt, and 3 gold signed rings. Your English had a tinkle of Oxford about it, and your nails have the soft sheen on a recently manicured. You are not a waiter. You are our contact, Nguyen Xian, and you have adopted this pathetic disguise to discerningly check for weaponry." Nguyen's shoulders sagged. "It is true." "Amazing." "Hardly. A ragged apron does not a waiter make." Nguyen sat, pouring some mint tea into a tiny china cup. "Let me fill you on the weapon status," continued Artemis. "I am unarmed, but Butler here, my butler, has a 6-hour in his shoulder holster, 2 shrike-throwing knives in his boots, a Derrigan 2-shot up his sleeve, garrote wire in his watch, and 3 stun grenades concealed in various pockets. Anything else, Butler?" "The Kosh, sir." "Oh, yeah, a good old ball-bearing Kosh stuffed down his shirt." Nguyen brought the cup trembling to his lips. "Don't be alarmed, Mr. Xan," Artemis smiled. "Weapons will not be used on you." Nguyen didn't seem reassured. "No," continued Artemis, "Butler could kill you 100 different ways without the use of these weapons, though I'm sure one would be quite sufficient." Nguyen was by now forcefully spooked. Artemis generally had that effect on people. A pale adolescent speaking with the authority and the vocabulary of a powerful adult. Nguyen had heard of the name Fowl before. Who hadn't in the international underworld, but he assumed he'd be dealing with Artemis Sr., not his boy. Though the word boy hardly seemed to do this gaunt individual justice. And the giant, Butler. It was obvious that he could snap a man's backbone like a twig with those mammoth hands. Nguyen was starting to think that no amount of money was worth another minute in this strange company. "And now to business," said Artemis, placing a micro recorder on the table. "You answered our web advertisement." Nguyen nodded, suddenly praying that his information was accurate. "Yes, Master Fowl. What you were looking for, I know where it is." "Really? And am I supposed to take your word for this? You could be walking me straight into an ambush. My family is no without enemies." Butler snatched a mosquito out of the air beside his employee's ear. No, said Negan, reaching to his wallet. "Here, look." Artemis studied the Polaroid. He willed his heart to maintain a calm beat. It seemed promising, but anything could be fake these days with a PC and flatbed scanner. The picture showed a hand reaching from layered shadows. A mottled green hand. He murmured. "Explain?" "This woman. She is a healer near Tudor Street. She works in exchange for rice wine. All the time. Drunk." Artemis nodded. It made sense. The drinking. One of the few consistent facts his research had unearthed. He stood, pulling the creases from his white polo shirt. Very well. Lay down, Mr. Xan. Eoin wiped the sweat from his stringy mustache. Information only. That was the agreement. I don't want any curses on my head. Butler expertly gripped the informant behind the neck. I'm sorry, Mr. Xang, but the time when you had a choice in matters is long past. Butler steered the protesting Vietnamese man to the rented four-wheel drive. It was hardly necessary on the flat streets of Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon, as the locals still called it, but Artemis preferred to be as insulated from civilians as possible. The jeep inched forward at a painfully slow rate, made all the more excruciating by the anticipation building in Artemis' chest. He could suppress it no longer. Could they at last be at the end of their quest? After 6 false alarms across 3 continents, could the swine-sodden healer be the gold at the end of the rainbow? Artemis almost chuckled. Gold at the end of the rainbow. He'd made a joke. Now there's something that didn't happen every day. The Muppets parted like fish in a giant shoal. There seemed to be no end to the crowds. Even the alleyways were full to bursting with vendors and hagglers. Cooks dropped fish heads into woks of hissing oil, and urchins threaded their way underfoot searching for unguarded valuables. Ours sat in the shade, wearing out their thumbs on Game Boys. Eoin was sweating right through his khaki top. It wasn't the humidity. He was used to that. It does this whole cursed situation. He should have known better than to mix magic and crime. He made a silent promise that if he got out of this, he would change his ways. No more answering shady internet requests, and certainly no more consorting with the sons of European crime lords. The jeep could go only so far. Eventually, the side streets grew too narrow for the four-wheel drive. Artemis turned to Eoin. It seems we must proceed on foot, Mr. Xian. Run if you like, but expect a sharp and fatal pain between your shoulder blades. Eoin glanced into Butler's eyes. They were a deep blue, almost black. There was no mercy in those eyes. Don't worry, he said. I won't run. They climbed down from the vehicle. 1,000 suspicious eyes followed their progress along the steaming alley. An unfortunate pickpocket attempted to steal Butler's wallet. The manservant broke the man's fingers without looking down. They were given a wide berth after that. The alley narrowed to a rooted lane. Sewage and drain pipes fed directly on the muddy surface. Cripples and beggars huddled on rice mat islands. Most of the residents of this lane had nothing to spare, with the exception of 3. Well, demanded Artemis, where is she? Eoin jabbed a finger towards a black triangle beneath a rusted fire escape. There, under there. She never comes out. Even to buy rice spirits, she sends a runner. Now, can I go? Artemis didn't bother answering. Instead, he picked his way across the puddled lane to the lee of the fire escape. He could discern furtive movements in the shadows. Butler, could you hand me a goggles? Butler, could you handle me the goggles? Butler plucked a set of night vision glasses from his belt and placed them in Artemis' outstretched hand. The focus motor buzzed to suit the light. Artemis fixed the glasses onto his face. Everything became radioactive green. Taking a deep breath, he turned his gaze to the squirming shadows. Something squatted on the raffia mat, shifting uneasily in the almost non-existent light. Artemis fine-tuned the focus. The figure was small, abnormally so, and wrapped in a filthy shawl. Empty spirit jacks were half buried in the mud around her. One forearm poked from the material. It seemed green, but then so did everything else. "Madam," he said, "I have a proposition for you." The figure's head wobbled sleepily. "Wine," she rasped, her voice like nails on a scoreboard. "Wine! English!" Artemis smiled. The gift of tongues, check. Aversion to light, check. Irish, actually. Now, about my proposition. The healer shook a bony finger craftily. "Wine first, then talk." "Butler." The bodyguard reached into a pocket and drew out a half pint of the finest Irish whiskey. Artemis took the bottle and held it teasingly beyond the shadows. He barely had time to remove his goggles when the claw-like hand darted from the gloom to snatch the whiskey. A mottled green hand. There was no doubt. Artemis swallowed a triumphant grin. "Pay our friend Butler, in full. Remember, Mr. Xan, this is between us. You don't want Butler to come back, do you?" No, Master Fowl, my lips are sealed." "They had better be, or Butler will seal them permanently." Eoin skipped off down the alley, so relieved to be alive that he didn't even bother counting the shave of US currency. Most unlike him. In any event, it was all there. All $20,000. Not bad for half an hour's work. Artemis turned back to the healer. "Now, madam, you have something that I want." The healer's tongue coughed a drop of alcohol in the corner of her mouth. "Yes, Iris. So had bad tooth, eye heal." Artemis replaced the night vision goggles and squatted to her level. "I'm perfectly healthy, madam, apart from a slight dust mite allergy, and I don't think even you can do anything about that. No, what I want from you is your book." The hag froze. Bright eyes glinted from beneath the shawl. "Book?" she said cautiously. "I don't know about no book. I am healer. You want book, go to library." Artemis sighed with exaggerated patience. "You are no healer. You are a sprite. Shock, fairy, Kadaloon, whichever language you prefer to use. And I want your book." For a long moment, the creature said nothing. Then she threw back the shawl from her forehead. In the green glow of the night vision goggles, her features leaped at Artemis like a Halloween mask. The fairy's nose was long and hooked on the two slitted golden eyes. Her ears were pointed, and the alcohol addiction had melted her skin like putty. "If you know about the book, human," she said slowly, fighting the numbing effects of the whiskey, "then you know about the magic I have in my fist. I can kill you with a snap of my fingers." Artemis shrugged. "I think not. Look at you. You are near dead. The rice wine has dulled your senses, reduced your healing wards. Pathetic. I am here to save you. In return for your book." "What could a human want with our book?" "That is no concern of yours. All you need to know are your options." The sprite's pointed ears quivered. "Options?" "1. You refuse to give us the book, and we go home, leaving you to rot in this sewer." "Yes," said the fairy. "I choose this option." "Ah, no. Don't be so eager. If we leave without the book, you will be dead in a day. A day? A day! The healer laughed. I will outlive you by a century. Even fairies tethered to the human realm can survive the ages. Not with half a pint of holy water inside them, said Artemis, tapping the now empty whiskey bottle. The fairy blanched, then screamed, a high, keen, horrible sound. Holy water! You have murdered me, human! True, admitted Artemis. It should start to burn any minute now. The fairy poked her stomach tentatively. The second option? Listen in now, are we? Very well then. Option 2. You give me the book for 30 minutes only. Then I return your magic to you. The sprite's jaw dropped. Return my magic? Not possible. Oh, but it is. I have in my possession 2 ampules. One, a vial of spring water from the fairy well 60 meters below the ring of Tara, possibly the most magical place on earth. This will contract the holy water. And the other? The other is a little shot of man-made magic. A virus that feeds on alcohol mixed with a grow agent. It will flush every drop of rice wine from your body, remove the dependence, and even bolster your failing liver. It will be messy, but after a day, you will be zipping around as though you were 1,000 years old again. The sprite licked her lips. To be able to rejoin the people? Tempting. How do I know to trust you, human? You have tricked me once already. Good point. Here's the deal. I give you the water on faith. Then, after I had a look at the book, you get the booster. Take it or leave it. The fairy considered. The pain was already curling around her abdomen. She thrust out her wrist. I'll take it. I thought you might. Butler, the giant man-servant unwrapped a soft, velcroed case containing a syringe gun and 2 vials. He loaded the clear one, shooting it into the sprite's clammy arm. The fairy stiffened momentarily and then relaxed. Strong magic, she breathed. Yes, but not as strong as your own will. But not as strong as your own will be when I give you the second injection. Now, the book. The sprite reached into the folds of her filthy robe, rummaging for an age. Artemis held his breath. This was it. Soon the Fowls would be great again. A new empire would rise with Artemis Fowl II at its head. The fairy woman withdrew a closed fist. No use to you anyway, written in the old tongue. Artemis nodded, not trusting himself to speak. She opened her knobby fingers. Lying in her palm was a tiny golden volume the size of a matchbox. Here, human. 30 of your minutes. No more. Butler took the tiny tome reverentially. The bodyguard activated a compact digital camera and began photographing each wafer-thin page of the book. The process took several minutes. When he was finished, the entire volume was stored on the camera's chip. Artemis preferred not to take chances with information. Airport security equipment had been known to wipe many a vital disk, so he instructed his AD to transfer the file to his portable phone and from the email into Fowl Manor in Dublin. Before the 30 minutes were up, the file containing every symbol in the fairy book was sitting safely in the file server. Artemis returned the tiny volume to its owner. Nice doing business with you. The sprite lurched to her knees. The overpowered human? Artemis smiled. Oh yes, the starting booster. I suppose I did promise. Yes, human promised. Very well. But before we administer it, I must warn you, the purging is not pleasant. You're not going to enjoy this one bit. The fairy gestured around her and the squalid filth. You think I enjoyed this? I want to fly again. Butler loaded the second vial, shooting this one straight into the carotid artery. The sprite immediately collapsed on the mat, her entire frame quivering violently. Time to leave, commented Artemis. 100 years of alcohol leaving a body by any means possible is not a pretty sight. The butlers had been serving the fowls for centuries. The butlers had been serving the fowls for centuries. It had always been this way. Indeed, there was several eminent linguists of the opinion that this was how the common noun had originated. The first record of this unusual arrangement was when Virgin Butler had been contracted as servant, bodyguard, and cook to Lord Hugo de Fowler for one of the first great Norman Crusades. At the age of 10, Butler children were sent to a private training center in Israel, that they were taught the specialized skill necessary to guard the latest in the fowl line. These skills included cordon bleu cooking, marksmanship, a customized blend of martial arts, emergency medicine, and information technology. If, at the end of their training, there was not a fowl to guard, then the butlers were eagerly snapped up as bodyguards for various royal personages, generally in Monaco or Saudi Arabia. Once a fowl and a butler were put together, they were paired for life. It was a demanding job and lonely, but the rewards were handsome if you survived to enjoy them. If not, then your family received a 6-figure settlement plus a monthly pension. The current butler had been guarding young Master Artemis for 12 years, since the moment of his birth. And though they adhered to the age-old formalities, they were much more than master and servant. Artemis was the closest thing Butler had to a friend, and Butler was the closest Artemis had to a father, albeit one who obeyed orders. Butler had held his tongue until they were aboard a Heathrow connection from Bangkok. Then he had to ask, Artemis? Artemis looked up from the screen of his power book. He was getting a head start on the translation. Yes? The sprite. Why didn't we simply keep the book and leave her to die? A corpse is evidence, Butler. My way, the people will have no reason to be suspicious. But the sprite? I hardly think she will confess to showing humans the book. In any case, I mixed a slight amnesiac into her second injection. When she finally wakes up, the last week will be a blur. Butler nodded appreciatively. Always 2 steps ahead. That was Master Artemis. People said he was a chip off the old block. They were wrong. Master Artemis was a brand new block, the likes of which had never been seen before. Doubts assuaded, Butler returned to his copy of Guns and Ammo, leaving his employer to unravel the secrets of the universe. Oh, well, that was a mouthful. And there's still no US, but I'm fine. Oops, sorry. So that's the end of the first chapter. We spent around 30 minutes reading it, so and there's entirely 9 chapters. If all the chapters are about some length, I might not have enough time to read it on the stream. But that's fine. Just give me a short break now. Reading for long periods of time is quite taxing on your vocals. But well, so is talking for hours. Chapter 2. Translation. By now, you must have guessed just how far Artemis Fowl was prepared to go in order to achieve his goal. But what exactly was his goal? What outlandish scheme would involve the blackmailing of alcohol-addicted sprite? The answer was gold. Artemis' search had begun 2 years previously when he first became interested in surfing the internet. He quickly found the more arcane sites, alien abduction, UFO sightings, and the supernatural, but most specifically the existence of the people. Traveling through gigabytes of data, he found hundreds of references to fairies from nearly every country in the world. Each civilization had its own term for the people, but they were undoubtedly members of the same hidden family. Several stories mentioned a book carried by each fairy. It was the Bible, containing, as it allegedly did, the history of the race and the commandments that governed their extended lives. Of course, this book was written in Gnomish, the fairy language, and would be of no use to any human. Artemis believed that with today's technology, the book could be translated. And with this translation, you could begin to exploit a whole new group of creatures. Know thine enemy was Artemis' motto, so he immersed himself in the lore of the people until he had compiled a huge database on their characteristics. But it wasn't enough. So Artemis put out a call on the web. Irish businessmen will pay a large amount of US dollars to meet a fairy, sprite, leprechaun, pixie. The responses had been mostly fraudulent, but Ho Chi Minh City had finally paid off. Artemis was perhaps the only person alive who could take full advantage of this recent acquisition. He still retained a childlike belief in magic, tempered by an adult determination to exploit it. If there was anybody capable of relieving the fairies of some of their magical gold, it was Artemis Fowl II. It was early morning before they reached Fowl Manor. Artemis was anxious to bring up the file on his computer, but first he decided to call in on Mother. Angeline Fowl was bedridden. She had been since her husband's disappearance. Nervous tension, the physician said. Nothing for it but rest and sleep pills. That was almost a year ago. Butler's little sister Juliet was sitting at the foot of the stairs. Her gaze was boring a hole in the wall. Even the glittering mascara couldn't soften her expression. Artemis had seen that look already just before Juliet had suplexed a particularly imprudent pizza boy. The suplex, Artemis gathered, was a wrestling move. An unusual obsession for a teenage girl, but then again she was, after all, a butler. Problems, Juliet? Juliet straightened her. My own faults, Artemis. Apparently I left a gap in the curtains. Mrs. Fowl couldn't sleep. Muttered Artemis, scaling the arc staircase slowly. He worried about his mother's condition. She hadn't seen the light of a day in a long time now. Then again, should she miraculously recover, emerging revitalized from her bedchamber, it would signal the end of Artemis' own extraordinary freedom. It would be back off to school and no more spearheading criminal enterprise for you, my boy. He knocked gently on the arched double door. Mother, are you awake? Something smashed against the overside of the door. It sounded expensive. Of course I'm awake. How am I sleeping in this blinking glare? Artemis ventured inside. The antique four-poster bed threw shadowy spires in the darkness, and the pale silver of light poked through a gap in the velvet curtains. Angeline Fowler sat hunched on the bed, her pale limbs glowing white in the gloom. Artemis, darling, where have you been? Artemis sighed. She recognized him. That was a good sign. School trip, mother. Skiing in Austria. Ah, skiing, crooned Angeline. How I missed it. Maybe when your father returns. Artemis felt a lump in his throat. Most uncharacteristic. Yes, perhaps when father returns. Darling, could you close this bridge? It contains light is intolerable. Of course, mother. Artemis felt his way across the room, wary of the low-level clothes chests scattered around the floor. Finally, his fingers curled around the velvet drapes. For a moment, he was tempted to throw them wide open, then he sighed and closed the gap. Thank you, darling. By the way, we really have to get rid of that maid. She is good for absolutely nothing. Artemis held his tongue. Johnny had been a hard-working and loyal member of the Fowl household for the past 3 years. Time to use Mauer's absent-mindedness to his advantage. You're right, of course, Mauer. I've been meaning to do it for some time. Butler had a sister I believe would be perfect for the position. I think I mentioned her. Juliet? Angeline frowned. Juliet? Yes, the name does seem familiar. Well, anyone would be better than that silly girl we have now. When can she start? Straight away. I will have Butler fetch her from the lodge. You're a good boy, Artemis. Now, give Mommy a hug. Artemis stepped into the shadowy folds of his mother's robe. She smelled perfumed like petals in the water, but her arms were cold and weak. Oh, darling, she whispered, and the sound sent goosebumps popping down Artemis' neck. I hear things. At night, they crawl along the pillows and into my ears. Artemis felt that lump in his throat again. Perhaps we should open the curtains, mother. No, his mother sobbed, releasing him from the grasp. No, because then I could see them too. Mother, please. But it was no use. Angeline was gone. She crawled to the far corner of the bed, pulling the quilt under her chin. Send the new girl. Yes, mother. Send her with the cucumber slices and water. Yes, mother. Angeline glared at him with crafty eyes. And stop calling me mother. I don't know who you are, but you're certainly not my little Artie. Artemis blinked back a few rebellious tears. Of course, sorry. Sorry. Don't come back here again, or I will have my husband take care of you. He's a very important man, you know. Very well, Miss Fowl. This is the last you will see of me. It had better be, Angeline froze suddenly. Do you hear them? Artemis shook his head. No, I don't hear any. They're coming for me. They're everywhere. Angeline dived for cover beneath the bedclothes. Artemis could still hear her terrified sobs as she descended the marble staircase. The book was proving far more stubborn than Artemis had anticipated. It seemed to be almost actively resisting him. No matter which program he ran it through, the computer came a blank. Artemis hard-copied every page, tackling them to the walls of his study, Sometimes it helped to have things on paper. The script was like nothing he'd seen before, and yet it was strangely familiar. Obviously a mixture of symbolic and character-based language, with text meandered around the page in no apparent order. What the program needed was some frame of reference, some central point on which to build. He separated all the characters and ran comparisons with English, Chinese, Greek, Arabic, and with Killeric texts, even with Ogham. Nothing. Moody with frustration, Artemis sent Jolie scurrying when she interrupted with sandwiches and moved on to symbols. The most frequently recurring pictogram was a small male figure. Male, he presumed, though with the limited knowledge of the fairy anatomy, he supposed it could be female. A thought struck him. Artemis opened the Ancient Languages file on his power translator and selected Egyptian. Artemis opened the Ancient Languages file on his power translator and selected Egyptian. At last, a hit. A male symbol was remarkably similar to Anubis' god representation of Tutankhamun inner chamber hieroglyphs. This was consistent with his other findings. The first written human stories were about fairies, suggesting that their civilization predates man's own. It would seem that the Egyptians had simply adapted an existing scripture to suit their needs. Where were our resemblances? But the characters were just dissimilar. Enough to slip through a computer's net. This would have to be done manually. Each gnomish figure had to be enlarged, printed, and then compared with the hieroglyphs. Artemis felt the excitement of success trumping inside his ribcage. Almost every fairy pictogram or letter had an Egyptian counterpart. Most were universal, such as the sun or birds, but some seemed exclusively supernatural and had to be tailored to fit. The Anubis figure, for example, would make no sense as a duck god, so Artemis altered it to read king or the fairies. By midnight, Artemis had successfully fed his findings into the Macintosh. All he had to do now was press decode. He did so. What emerged was a long, intricate string of meaningless gibberish. A normal child would have abandoned the task long since. The average adult would probably have been reduced to slapping the keyboard, but not Artemis. This book was testing him, and he would not allow him to win. The letters were right. He was certain of it. It was just the order that was wrong. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, Artemis glared at the pages again. Each segment was bordered by a solid line. This could represent paragraphs or chapters, but they were not meant to be read in the usual left to right, top to bottom fashion. Artemis experimented. He tried the Arabic right to left and the Chinese columns. Nothing worked. Then he noticed that each page had one thing in common: a central section. The over pictograms were arranged around this pivotal area. So, a central starting point perhaps, but where to go from there? Artemis scanned the pages for some other common factors. After several minutes he found them. There was on each page a tiny spreadsheet. Wrong. There was on each page a tiny spearhead in the corner of one section. Could this be an arrow? A direction? Go this way? So the theory would be start in the middle, then follow the arrow, reading in spirals. The computer program wasn't built to handle something like this, so Artemis had to improvise. With a craft knife and a ruler, he dissected the first page of the book and reassembled it in traditional Western language order, left to right, parallel rows. Then he rescanned the page and fed it through the modified Egyptian translator. The computer hummed and whirled, converting all the information to binary. Several times it stopped to ask for confirmation of a character or symbol. This happened less and less as the machine learned the new language. Eventually, 2 words flashed on the screen. File converted. Fingers shaking from exhaustion and excitement, Artemis clicked print. A single page scrolled from the laser writer. It was in English now. Yes, there were mistakes, some fine-tuning needed, but it was perfectly legible and, more important, perfectly understandable. Fully aware that he was probably the first human in several thousand years to decode the magical words, Artemis switched on his deck light and began to read. The Book of the People, being instructions to our magics and life rules. Carry me always, carry me well. I am the teacher of herb and spell. I am the link to power arcane. Forget me and the magics shall wane. 10 times 10 commandments there be, where will answer every mystery. Curses, alchemy. These secrets shall be thine through me. But, fairy, remember this above all. I am not for those in mood that crawl, and forever doomed shall be the one who betrays my secrets one by one. Artemis could hear the blood pumping in his ears. He had them. They would be as ants beneath his feet. There, every secret would be laid bare by technology. Suddenly, the exhaustion claimed him, and he sank back in his chair. There was so much yet to complete. 43 pages to be translated for a start. He pressed the intercom button that linked him to a speaker all over the house. Butler, get jollied and come up here. There are some jigsaws I need you to assemble. Perhaps a little family history would be useful at this point. The Fowls were indeed legendary criminals. For generations, they had skirmished on the wrong side of the law, borrowing enough funds to become legitimate. Of course, once they were legitimate, they found it not to their liking and returned almost immediately to crime. It was Artemis I, our subject's father, who had thrown the family fortune into jeopardy. With the breakup of communist Russia, Artemis Sr. had decided to invest a huge chunk of the Fowls' fortune in establishing new shipping lines to the vast continent. New consumers, he reasoned, would need new consumer goods. The Russian mafia did not take too kindly to the Western muscling in on their market, and so decided to send a little message. This message took the form of a stolen missile launched at the Fowl Star on her way past Murmansk. Artemis Sr. was on board the ship along with Butler's uncle and 250,000 cans of cola. It was quite an explosion. The Fowls were not left destitute, far from it, but billionaire status was no longer theirs. Artemis II vowed to remedy this. He would restore the family fortune, and he would do it in his own unique fashion. Once the book was translated, Artemis could begin planning in earnest. He already knew what the ultimate goal was. Now he could figure out how to achieve it. Gold, of course, was the objective, the acquisition of gold. It seemed that the people were almost as fond of the precious metal as humans. Each fairy had its own catch, but not for much longer Artemis had his way. there would be at least one of the fairy folk wandering around this with empty pockets by the time he would finish. There would be at least one of the fairy folk wandering around with empty pockets by the time he would finished. By the time he'd finished. After 18 solid hours of sleep and a light continental breakfast, Artemis climbed to the study that he had inherited from his father. It was a traditional enough room, dark oak and floor-to-ceiling shelving, but Artemis had jammed it with the latest computer technology, a series of networked Apple Macs wheeled from various corners of the room. One was running CNN's website through a DAT projector, throwing oversized current affairs images against the back wall. Butler was there already, firing up the hard drives. Shut them all down, except the book. I need quiet for this. The Manson started. The CNN site had been running for almost a year. Artemis had convinced the news of his father's rescue would come from there. Shutting it down meant he was finally letting go. All of them? Artemis glanced at the back wall for a moment. Yes, he said finally. All of them. Butler took the liberty of patting his employers gently on the shoulder just once, before returning to work. Artemis cracked his knuckles. Time to do what he did best. Plot dastardly acts. Whew, okay, that's a rather short chapter. I haven't read this much in a while. My eyes are getting tired, actually. I was thinking about at least 2 hours stream, but I'm not sure if I will be able to handle. Maybe 1 or 2 more chapters, and that will be the end of the stream. Oh, and yeah, after the stream, in a day or 2, I guess I will look through the video and create a bookmark, so whoever will be watching the recording on YouTube. Oh my god. I'm sorry. Whoever will be watching the recording on YouTube will be able to navigate freely to the parts where I am just chatting and where I'm actually reading a book. Split into chapters, all proper. So, yeah, maybe it will be a readable experience, but, well, readable, I mean listenable. Is that a word? Listenable. A listenable experience. Yes. So, I'm still making spelling mistakes though, so if you made it to this point, I guess you probably already noticed, and be mindful to me making mistakes. It's not a perfectly nice audiobook. Now, 5 minutes break for my vocals, for my vocabularies. Yeah, that's how you say it. So, short break for my vocabularies, and we will be back into the chapter 3. Alright, I am back, and I'm also kinda sad to see for the entire duration of the stream that viewers count is actually 0. That's a really alarming sight. I will have to watch the statistics of this video after the stream because I feel like no one's been finding my stream at all. Not that no one came even for a moment, but rather that it was much harder to find my stream than if I was playing a game. That's quite troubling, and I clearly need to resolve that if I want to continue. But that's not a thing for today. So, Chapter 3. Holy. Holy Short was lying in a bed, silently fuming. Nothing unusual about this. Leprechauns in general were not known for their geniality, but Holy was in an exceptionally bad mood, even for a fairy. Technically, she was an elf, a fairy being a general term. She was a leprechaun too, but that was just a job. Perhaps a description would be more helpful than a lecture on fairy genealogy. Holy Short was nut brown skin, cropped auburn hair, and hazel eyes. Her nose had a hook, and her mouth was plump and cherubic, which was appropriate considering Cupid was her great-grandfather. Her mother was a European elf with a fiery temper and willowy figure. Holy, too, had a slim frame with long, tapered fingers, perfect for wrapping around a boss baton. Her ears, of course, were pointed. At exactly 3 feet in height, Holy was only a centimeter below the fairy average, but even 1 centimeter can make an awful lot of difference when you don't have many to spare. Commander Root was the cause of Holy's distress. Root had been on Holy's case since day 1. The commander had decided to take offense at the fact that the first female officer in Recon's history had been assigned to his squad. Recon was a notoriously dangerous posting with a high fatality rate, and Root didn't think it was any place for a girlie. Well, he was just going to have to get used to the idea because Holy Short had no intentions of quitting from him or anybody else. Though she would never admit it, another possible cause for Holy's irritability was the ritual. She'd been meaning to perform it for several months now, but somehow there just never seemed to be time. And if Ruth found out she was running low on magic, she would be transferred to traffic for sure. Holy rolled off her futon and stumbled into the shower. That was one advantage of living near the Earth's core. The water was always hot. No natural lights, of course, but that was a small price to pay for privacy. Underground, the last human-free zone, there was nothing like coming home after a long day on the job, switching off your shield, and sinking into a bubbling slime pool. Bliss. The fairy stood up, zipping a dull green jumpsuit up to her chin and strapping on her helmet. Leprechaun uniforms were stylish these days. Not like that top of the morning costume the fuzz had to wear back in the old days. Buckled shoes and nickel blockers. and knickerbockers. Knickerbockers. Buckled shoes and knickerbockers. Honestly, no wonder leprechauns were such ridiculous figures in human folklore. Still, probably better that way. If the mud people knew that the word replicon actually originated from leprechaun, recon, an elite branch of the lower elements police, they would probably take steps to stamp them out. Better to stay inconspicuous and let the humans have their stereotypes. With the moon already rising on the surface, there was no time for a proper breakfast. Holly grabbed the remains of a nettle smoothie from a cooler and drank it in the tunnels. As usual, there was chaos in the main thoroughfare. Airborne sprites jammed the avenue like stones in a bottle. The gnomes weren't helping either, lumbering along with their big swinging behinds blocking 2 lanes. Swear thoughts infested every dump patch, cursing like sailors. That particular breed began as a joke but had multiplied into an epidemic. Someone lost their mind over that one. Holly battled through the crowds of the police station. Holly battled through the crowds to the police station. There was already a riot outside Spud Emporium. LEP Corporal Newt was trying to sort it out. Good luck to him. Nightmare. At least Holly got the chance to work above ground. The ELP station's door were crammed with protesters. The Goblin Dwarf Tough War had flared up again, and every morning hordes of angry parents showed up demanding the release of the innocent offspring. Holly snorted. If there actually was an innocent goblin. Holy Short had yet to meet him. They were clogging up the cells now, howling gang chants and hurling fireballs at each other. Holly shouldered her way into the throng. "Coming through," she grunted. "Police business." They were on her like flies on a stinkworm. "My grandpa is innocent!" "Police brutality!" "Officer, could you take my baby in this blankie? He can't sleep without it." Holly set her visor to reflect and ignored them all. Once upon a time, that uniform would have earned you some respect. Not anymore. Now you were a target. "Excuse me, officer, but I seem to have misplaced my jar of warts." "Pardon me, young elf, but my cats climbed the stalactite." Or, "If you have a minute, Captain, could you tell me how to get to the Fountain of Youth?" Holly shrugged. Tourists. She had troubles of her own. More than she knew, as she was about to find. More than she knew, as she was about to find out. In the station lobby, a kleptomaniac dwarf was busy picking the pockets of everyone else in the booking line, including the officer he was handcuffed to. Holly gave him a swipe in the backside with a buzz baton. The electric charge sagged the seat of his leather pants. "What you doing there, Mulch?" Mulch startled, contraband dropping from his sleeves. "Officer Short," he whined, his face a mask of regret. "I can't help myself. It's my nature." "I know that, Mulch. And it's our nature to throw you in a cell for a couple of centuries." She winked at the dwarf arresting officer. "Nice to see you staying alert." The elf blushed, kneeling to pick up his wallet and badge. Holly forged past Ruth's office, hoping she would make it to her crucible before Short! Get in there! Holly sighed. "Oh well, here we go again." Stowing her helmet under her arm, Holly smoothed her wrist from her uniform and stepped into Commander Ruth's office. Ruth's face was purple with rage. This was more or less his general state of existence, a fact that had earned him the nickname Beetroot. There was an office poll running on how long he had before his heart exploded. The smart money was on half a century, at the outside. Commander Root was tapping on the moon meter on his wrist. "Well," he demanded, "what time do you call this?" Holly could feel her own face coloring. She was barely a minute late. There were at least a dozen officers on the ship who hadn't even reported in yet, but Ruth always singled her out for persecution. The thoroughfare, she mumbled lamely. There was 4 lanes down. "Don't insult me with your excuses," roared the commander. "You know what the city center is like. Get up a few minutes earlier." It was true. She didn't know that Haven was like. She did know what Haven was like. Holy Short was a city elf born and bred. Since the human had begun experimenting with mineral drilling, more and more fairies had been drilling out of the shallow forts and into the depths and security of Haven City. The metropolis was overcrowded and underserviced, and now there was a lobby to allow automobiles in the pedestrianized city center, as if the place wasn't smelly enough already with all those country gnomes lumbering around the place. Ruth was right. She should get up a bit earlier, but she wouldn't. Not until everybody else was forced to. "I know what you're thinking," said Ruth. "Why am I picking on you every day? Why don't you ever bawl out those other layabouts?" Holly said nothing, but agreement was written all over her face. "I will tell you why." "Shall I?" Holly risked a nod. "It's because you're a girl." Holly felt her fingers curl into fists. She knew it. "But not for reasons you think," continued Ruth. "You are the first girl in Recon. Ever. You are the test case. A beacon. There are a million fairies out there watching you every move. There are a lot of hopes riding on you, but there is a lot of prejudice against you too. The future of law enforcement is in your hands, and at the moment, I would say it was a little heavy." Holly blinked. Ruth had never said anything like this before. Usually it was just "fix your helmet, stand up straight, blah blah blah." You have to be the best you can be, Short, and that has to be better than anybody else. Ruth sighed, sagging into his swivel chair. "I don't know, Holly. Ever since the Hamburg incident," Holly winced. The Hamburg incident had been a total disaster. One of her perps had skipped out of the surface and tried to bargain with the mud people for asylum. Ruth had to stop time, call in the retrieval squad, and do 4 memory wipes. A lot of police time wasted. All her fault. The commander took a form from his desk. "It's no use. I've made up my mind. I'm putting you on traffic and beginning Corporal Front." "Front?" exploded Holly. "She's a bimbo, an ironhead. You can't make her the test case." Ruth's face turned an even deeper shade of purple. "I can, and I will. Why wouldn't I? You have never given me your best. Either that or your best just isn't good enough. Sorry, Short. You had your chance." The commander turned back on his paperwork. The meeting was over. Holly could only stand there, aghast. She would blow it. The best career opportunity she had ever likely to get. And she'd tossed it in the gutter. One mistake and her future was past. It wasn't fair. Holly felt an uncharacteristic anger take hold of her, but she swallowed it. This was no time to lose her temper. Commander Root, sir, I feel I deserve one more chance. Root didn't even look up from his paperwork. From the paperwork. And why is that? Holly took a deep breath. Because of my record, sir. It speaks for itself, apart from a Hamburg thing. 10 successful recons, not a single memory wipe or time stop apart from the Hamburg thing. Completed short. Holly took a chance. If I were a male, one of your precious sprites, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Ruth glanced up sharply. Now, just a minute, Captain Short. He was interrupted by a bleeping of one of the phones on his desk. Then 2. Then 3. A giant view screen crackled into life on the wall behind him. Ruth jabbed the speaker button, putting all the colors on conference. Yes, we've got a runner. Ruth nodded. Anything on Scopes? Scopes was the shop name for the shrouded trackers attached to American communication satellites. Yep, said Caller 2. Big blip in Europe, southern Italy. No shield. Ruth cursed. An unshielded fairy could be seen by mortal eyes. That wasn't so bad if the perp was humanoid. Classification? Bad news, Commander, said the third caller. We got us a rogue troll. Roth rubbed his eyes. Why did these things always happen on his watch? Holly could understand his frustration. Trolls were the meanest of the deep tunnel creatures. We wandered the labyrinth, preying on anything unlucky enough to cross their path. Their tiny brains had no room for rules or restraint. Occasionally, one found its way into the shaft of a pressure elevator. Usually, the concentrated air current fried them, but sometimes one survived and was blasted to the surface. Driven crazy by pain and even the tiniest amount of light, they would generally proceed to destroy everything in their path. Root shook his head rapidly, recovering himself. Okay, Captain Short, looks like you get your chance. You're running hot, I take it? Yes, sir, lied Holly, all too aware that Root would suspend her immediately if he knew she'd neglected the ritual. Good. Then send yourself out a sidearm and proceed to the target area. Holly glanced at the view screen. Scopes were sending high-res shots of an Italian fortified town. A red dot was moving rapidly through the countryside towards the human population. Do a thorough reconnaissance and report in. Do not attempt a retrieval. Is that understood? Yes, sir. We lost 6 men to troll attacks last quarter. 6 men. That was below ground, in familiar territory. I understand, sir. Rudd pursed his lips doubtfully. Do you understand, Short? Do you really? I think so, sir. Have you ever seen what a troll can do to a flesh and bone? No, sir. Not up close. Good. Let's not make today your first time. Understood. Rudd glared at her. I don't know why it is, Captain Short, but whenever you start agreeing with me, I get decidedly nervous. Rudd was right to be nervous. If he'd known how this straightforward recon assignment was going to turn out, he would probably have retired there and then. Tonight, history was going to be made. And it wasn't the discovery of radium, first man on the moon, happy kind of history. It was the Spanish Inquisition, here comes the Hindenburg, bad kind of history. Bad for humans and fairies. Bad for everyone. Holly proceeded directly to the clutches. Her normally chatty mouth was a grim slash of determination. One chance. That was it. She would allow nothing to break her concentration. There was the usual line of holiday visa hopefuls stretching to the corner of Elevator Plaza, but Holly bypassed it by waving her badge at the waiting line. A truculent gnome refused to yield. "How come you ELP guys get to go topside? What's so special about you?" Holly breathed deeply through her nose. Courtesy at all times. "Police business, sir. Now, if you could excuse me." The gnome scratched his massive behind. "I hear you ELP guys make up your police business just to get a look at some moonlight. That's what I hear." Holly attempted an amused smile. What actually formed on her lip resembled a lemon-sucking grimace. "Whoever told you that is an idiot, sir. Recon only ventures above ground when absolutely necessary." The gnome frowned. Obviously, he had made up the rumor himself, and suspected that Holly might have just called him an idiot. By the time he figured it out, she had skipped through the double doors. Foley was waiting for her in Ops. Foley was a paranoid centaur convinced that human intelligence agencies were monitoring his transport and surveillance network. To prevent them from reading his mind, he wore a tinfoil hat at all times. Yes. He glanced up sharply when Holly entered through a pneumatic double doors. "Anybody see you coming here?" Holly thought about it. "The FBI, CIA, NSA, DEA, MI6, and EIB. Foley frowned. "The EIB? Everyone in the building." Holly smirked. Foley rose from his swivel chair and clip-clopped over to her. "Oh, you very funny short. A regular ride. I thought the hamburger incident might have knocked some of the cockiness out of you. If I were you, I would concentrate on a job in hand." Holly composed herself. He was right. "Okay, Holly, fill me in." The centaur pointed to a live feed from the Eurosat, which was displayed on a large plasma screen. "This red dot is the Thrall. He's moving towards Martina Franca, a fortified town near the city of Brindisi. Near the city of Brindisi. Brindisi? That's how you read it? Wait a second. I'm pretty sure that's not a fictional city name. Brindisi. Brindisi, or it's C. Brindisi. 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 Oh, right, I muted my browser to not let it make different noises. Brindisi. Okay, so, right. This red dot is the Troll. He's moving towards Martina Franca, a fortified town near the city of Brindisi. As far as we can tell, he stumbled into vent E7. It was on cooldown after a surface shot. That's why the troll isn't crispy barbecue right now. Holly grimaced. Charming, she thought. We've been lucky in that our target has bumped into some food along the way. He chewed on a couple of cows for an hour or two, so that buffed up a bit of a time. A couple of cows! Exclaimed Collie. Just how big is this fellow? Foley adjusted his foil bonnet. Ball troll, fully grown, 180 kilos, with tusks like a wild boar. A really wild boar. Holly swallowed. Suddenly, recon seemed a much better job than retrieval. Right. What have you got for me? Foley cantered across to the equipment table. He selected what looked like a rectangular wristwatch. Located. You find him, we find him. Right and stuff. We do? The centaur clipped the smallest cylinder into the accommodating groove of Holly's helmet. Live feed. Nuclear battery. No time limit. The mic is voice activated. Good, said Holly. Ruth said I should take a weapon on this one, just in case. Way ahead of you, said Foley. He picked a platinum handgun from the pile, an Reno 2000, the latest model. Even the tunnel gangs don't have these. 3 settings, if you don't mind. Scorched, well done, and crisp to a cinder. Nuclear power source too, so plug away. This baby will outlive you by 1,000 years. Holly strapped the lightweight weapon into her shoulder holster. I'm ready, I think. Foley chuckled. I doubt it. No one's ever really ready for a troll. Thanks for the confidence, Buster. Confidence is ignorance, advised the centaur. If you're feeling cocky, it's because there's something you don't know. Holly thought about arguing, but didn't. Maybe it was because she had a sneaking suspicion that Foley was right. The pressure elevators were powered by gaseous columns vented from the Earth's core. The LAP tech boys, under Foley's guidance, had fashioned titanium eggs that could ride on the currents. They had their own independent motors, but for an express ride to the surface, there was nothing like a blast from a tidal flare. Foley led her past a long line of chud bays to E7. The pod sat in its clamp, looking very fragile to be rocketing about on magma streams. Its underside was charred black and pockmarked from shrapnel. The centaur slapped it fondly on a fender. This baby's been in service for 50 years. All this model is still in its chuds. Holly swallowed. The chuds made her nervous enough without riding it in a tick. When does it come offline? Foley scratched his hairy belly. Finding the way it is, not until we have us a fatality. Holly cranked open the heavy door, the rubber seat yielding with a hiss. The pod was not built for comfort. There was barely enough space for a restraining seat among the jumble of electronics. What's that? Asked Holly, pointing at the greyish stain on the seat's headrest. Foley shuffled uncomfortably. Brain fluid, I think. We had a pressure leak on the last mission, but that's black now. And the officer lived. Down a few IQ points, but alive. And he can still take liquids. Well, that's alright then, quipped Holly, threading her way through the mass of wires. Foley strapped her harness onto her, checking that restraints properly. Oh no, here comes the bots. On the timeout, to the block list, and I guess I also need to open a YouTube stream and but this little thing there. Give me a second. Okay. Back to the read. Foley strapped the harness onto her, checking the restraints roughly. All set? Holly nodded. Foley tapped her helmet mic. Keep in touch, he said, pulling the door closed behind him. Don't think about it, Holly told herself. Don't think about the white-hot manga flow that's going to engulf this tiny craft. Don't think about hurtling towards the surface with a Mach 2 force trying to turn your inside out. And certainly don't think about the blood-crazed troll ready to disembowel you with his tusks. Nope. Don't think about any of that stuff. Too late. Foley's voice sounded in her earpiece. T-20, he said. We're on a skew channel in case the mud people have started undergoing monitoring. You never know. An oil tanker from the Middle East intercepted a transmission one time. What a mess that was. Holly adjusted her helmet mic. Focus, Foley. My life is in your hands here. Okay, sorry. We're going to use the rail to drop you into E7's main shaft. There is a surge due any minute. That should see you past the first 100 clicks, then you're on your own. Holly nodded, curling her fingers around the twin joysticks. All systems check. Fire it up. There was a whoosh at the put. There was a whoosh at the put. There was a whoosh at the pod's engines ignited. Not now. Okay, one more time. There was a whoosh at the pod's engines. There was a whoosh as the pod engines ignited. The tiny craft jostled in its housing, shaking wholly like a bit in a rattle. Like a bead in a rattle. She could barely hear Foley speaking into her ear. You're in the secondary shaft now. Get ready to fly, Short. Holly pulled a rubber cylinder from the dash and slipped in between her teeth. No good having a radio if you swallowed your tongue. She activated the external cameras and put the view on screen. The entrance to E7 was creeping towards her. The air was shimmering in the leaden light glow, while hot sparks stumbled into the secondary shaft. Holly couldn't hear the roar, but she could imagine it, a raw, skinning bind like a million trolls howling. Her fingers tightened around the joysticks. The pod shuddered to halt at the lip, but shut stretched above and below. Massive, boundless, like dropping an ant down a drain pipe. Right-o, clicked Floaty. Hold on to your breakfast. Roller coasters ain't got nothing on this. Holly nodded. She couldn't speak, not with the rubber in her mouth. The centaur would be able to see her in the podcam anyways. Sayonara, sweetheart, said Floaty and pressed the button. The pod's clamp tilted, rolling Holly into the abyss. His stomach tightened a G-force took hold, dragging her to the center of the Earth. The seismology section had a million probes down here, with a 99.8 success rate at predicting the magma flares, but it was always that 0.2%. The fall seemed to last for an eternity, and just when Holly had mentally consigned herself to a scrap heap, she felt it. The unforgettable vibration. The feeling that outside her tiny sphere, the whole world has been shaken apart. Here it comes. Thanks, she said, spitting the word around the cylinder. Folly may have replied she couldn't hear him anymore. Holly couldn't even hear herself, but she did see the stabilization fins slide out on the monitor. The flare caught her like a hurricane, spinning the pod at first until the fins caught. Half-melted rocks pelted the cracks on the side, jolting in towards the chat walls. Holly compensated with bursts from the joysticks. The heat was tremendous in the confined space, enough to fry a human, but fairy lungs are made of stronger stuff. The acceleration dragged at her body with invincible hands, stretching the flesh over her arms and face. Holly blinked salty sweat from her eyes and concentrated on the monitor. The flare had totally engulfed her pod, and it was a big one too. 4-7 at the very least. A good 1,000-foot girth. Orange-striped magma swirled and hissed around her, searching for a weak point in the metal casing. The pod gnorred and complained, 50-year-old rivets threatening to pop. Holly shook her head. Her first thing she was going to do on her return was kick Foley straight into the hairy behind. She felt like a nut inside a shell between a gnome's molars. Doomed. A bow blade buckled, popped in, and though punched by a giant fist. The pressure light blinked on. Holly could feel her head being squeezed, and the eyes would be first to go, popping like ripe berries. She checked the dials. 20 more seconds before she rode out of the flare and was running on thermals. Those 20 seconds seemed like an age. Holly sealed her helmet to protect her eyes, riding on the final barrage of rocks, and suddenly they were clear, sailing upwards on the comparatively gentle spirals of hot air. Holly added her own thrusters to the upward force. No time to waste floating around on the wind. Above her, a circle of neon lights marked the docking zone. Holly swiveled horizontal and pointed the docking nodes at the lights. This was delicate. Many recon pilots had made it this far only to miss the port and lose valuable time. Not Holly. She was a natural. First in the academy. She gave the thrusters one final squeeze and coasted the last 100 feet. Using the rudders beneath her feet, she teased the boat through the circle of light and into its clamp on the landing pad. The nuts revolted, settling into their grooves. Safe. Holly smacked herself on the chest, releasing the safety harness. Once the door seal was opened, sweet surface air flooded the cabin. There was nothing like that first breath after a ride in the charts. She breathed deeply, purging the stale pod air from her lungs. How had the people ever left the surface? Sometimes she wished that her ancestors had stayed to fight it out with the mud people, but there were too many of them. Unlike fairies who could produce only a single child every 20 years, mud people bred like rodents. Numbers would subdue even magic. Although she was enjoying the night air, Holly could taste traces of pollutants. The mud people destroyed everything they came into contact with. Of course they didn't live in the mud anymore. Not in this country at least. Oh no. Big fancy dwellings with rooms for everything. Rooms for sleeping, rooms for eating, even a room to go with Even a room to go to a toilet. Indoors. Holly shuddered. Imagine going to the toilet inside your own house. Disgusting. The only thing about going to the toilet was the minerals being returned to the earth, but the mud people had even managed to wash that up by treating the stuff with bottles of blue chemicals. If anyone had told her 100 years ago that humans would be taking the tile out of fertilizer, she would have told them to get some air holes drilled in the skull. Holly unhooked a set of wings from their bracket. They were double ovals with a clunky motor. She moaned. Dragonflies. She hated that model. Gas engine, if you believed it. And heavier than a pig dipped in the mud. No, the Hummingbird Z7. That was transport. Whisper silent. With a satellite-bound solar battery that would fly you twice around the world. But there were budget cuts again. On her wrist, the locator began to beep. She was in rage. Holly stepped out of the pod and onto the landing bay. She was inside the camouflaged mound of Earth, commonly known as a fairy fart. Indeed, the people used to live in this until they were driven deeper underground. There wasn't much technology, just a few external monitors and a self-destruct device should the bay be discovered. There was nothing on the screens. All clear. The pneumatic doors were slightly asked there. The troll had backed through, but otherwise everything seemed operational. Holly strapped on the wings, stepped into the inside world. The Italian night sky was crisp and brisk, infused with olives and wine. Crickets clicked in the raw grass. Crickets clicked in the raw grass. Crickets clicked in the raw grass, and moths fluttered in the starlight. Holly couldn't stop herself smiling. It was worth the risk, every bit of it. Speaking of risk, she checked the locator. The pip was much stronger now. The troll was almost at the town walls. She could appreciate nature after the mission was over. Now it was time for action. Holly primed the wings motor, pulling the starter cord over her shoulder. Nothing. She fumed silently. Every spoiled kid in heaven had a hummingbird for the wilderness. Every spoiled kid in heaven had a hummingbird for a wilderness holiday, and here we LAP with wings that were junk when they were new. She yanked the cord again, and then again. On the third branch it caught, spewing a stream of smoke and fumed into the night. About time, she grunted, flinging the throttle wide open. The wings flapped their way up to a steady beat and, with not a little effort, lifted Captain Holly short into the night sky. Even without the locator, the troll would have been easy to follow. It had left a trail of destruction wider than a tunnel excavator. Holly flew low, skipping between mist hazes and trees, matching the troll's course. The crazed creature had cut a swathe through the middle of a vineyard, turned a stone wall to rubble, and left a guard dog gibbering under a hedge. Then she flew over the cows. It was not a pretty sight. Without going into details, let's just say that there wasn't much left beside horns and hooves. The red beep was louder now. Louder meant closer. She could see the town below her, nestled on top of a low hill, surrounded by a crenulated wall from the Middle Ages. Lights still burned in most windows. time for a little magic. A lot of the magic attributes of the people is just superstition, but they do have certain powers. Healing, the mesmer, and shielding among them. Shielding is really a misnomer. What fairies actually do is to vibrate at such a high frequency that they are never in one place long enough to be seen. Humans may notice a slight shimmer in the air if they are paying close attention, which they rarely are. And even then, the shimmer is generally attributed to evaporation. Typical of mod people to invent a complicated explanation to a simple phenomenon. Holly switched on her shield. It took a bit more out of her than usual. She could feel the strain in the beads of sweat on her forehead. I really should complete the ritual, she thought. The sooner the better. Some commotion below broke into her thoughts, something that didn't get with the nighttime noises. Holly adjusted the trim on her backpack and flew in for a closer look. Look only, she reminded herself. That was her job. A recon officer was sent up the clutch to pinpoint the target, while the retrieval boys took a nice, cushy shuttle. The troll was directly below her, pounding against the town's outer wall, which was coming away in chunks beneath his powerful fingers. Holly sucked in a startled gasp. This guy was a monster! Big as an elephant and 10 times as mean, but this particular beast was worse than mean. He was scared. Control, said Holly into the mic. Running relocated. Situation critical topside. Root himself was on the other end on the comlink. Clarify, Captain. Holly pointed her video link at the troll. Runner is going through the town wall. Contact imminent. How far away is retrieval? ETA 5 minutes minimum. We're still in the shuttle. Holly bit her lip. Root was in the shuttle? That's too long, Commander. This whole town is going to explode in 10 seconds. I'm going in. Negative, Holly. Captain Short. You don't have an invite. You know the love. Hold your position. But, Commander, Root cut her off. No! No buts, Captain. Hand back. That's an order. Holly's entire body felt like a heartbeat. Gasoline fumes were addling her brain. What could she do? What was the right decision to make? Lives or orders? Then the troll broke through the wall and the child voice split the night. Aito! It screamed. Help. An invitation. At a stretch. Sorry, Commander, the troll is white crazy and there are children everywhere. She could imagine Root's face, purple with rage, as he spat into the mic. I will have you striped. I will have your stripes short. You will spend the next 100 years on a drain duty. But it was no use. Holly had disconnected her mic and swooped in after the troll. Streamlining her body, Captain Short ducked into the hall. She appeared to be in a restaurant. A packed restaurant. The troll had been temporarily blinded by electric light and were thrashing about in the center of the floor. The patrons were stunned. Even the child play had petered out. They sat gaping. Party hats perched comically on their heads. Waiters froze. Huge trays of pasta quivering on their sprayed fingers. Chubby Italian infants covered their eyes with chubby fingers. It was always like this in the beginning. The shocked silence. Then came the screaming. A wine bottle crashed onto the floor. It broke the spell. The pandemonium started. Holly winced. Trolls hated noise almost as much as light. The troll lifted massive shaggy shoulders, its retractable claws sliding out with an ominous shriek. Trolls hated classic predator behavior. The beast was about to strike. Holly drew her weapon and flicked it up to the second setting. She couldn't kill the troll under any circumstances. Not to save humans, but she could certainly put him out until retrieval arrived. Aiming for the weak point at the base of the skull, she let the troll have a long burst of her concentrated iron ray. The beast staggered, stumbled a few steps, then got very angry. It's okay, thought Harry. I'm shielded. Invisible. To any onlookers, it would seem as though the pulsing blue beam emanated from thin air. The troll rounded on her, its muddy dreadlocks swinging like candles. No panic. It can't see me. The troll picked up a table. Invincible. Totally invincible. He pulled back a shaggy arm and let fly. Just a slight shimmer in the air. The table tumbled straight towards her head. Holly moved. A second too late. A table clipped her backpack, knocking her gassed and clean off. It spun through the air, trailing flammable fluid. Italian restaurants. Wouldn't you know it? Full of candles. The tank twirled right through an elaborate candelabrum and burst into flames like some deadly firework. Some of the gas landed on the troll. So did Holly. The troll could see her. There was no doubt about it. It squinted at her through the hated light. It blew a rictus of pain and fear. Her shield was off. Her magic was gone. Holly twisted in the troll's grip, but it was useless. The creature's fingers were the size of bananas, but nowhere near as pliant. They were squashing the breath from her rib cage with a savage ease. Needle-like claws were scraping at the toughened material of her uniform. Any second now, they would punch through, and that would be that. Holly couldn't think. The restaurant was a carousel of chaos. The troll was gnashing its tusks, greasy molars trying to grip her helmet. Holly could smell its fetid breath through her filters. She could smell the odor of burning food too, and the fire spread along the troll's back. The beast's green tongue rasped across her visor, slimming the lower section. The visor! That was it. Her only chance. Holly warmed her free hand to the helmet controls. The tunnel lights. High beams. She depressed the sunken button, and 800 watts of unfiltered light blasted from a twin spotlight above her eyes. The troll reared back, a penetrating scream exploding from between rows of teeth. Dozens of glasses and bottles shattered where they stood. It was too much for the poor beast, stunned, set on fire, and now blinded. The shock and pain made their way through to its tiny brain, urging it to shut down. The troll complied, keeling over with almost comical stiffness. Holly rolled to avoid a stifling tusk. There was complete silence but for tinkling glass cracking through and the sudden release of breath. Holly climbed shakily to her feet. There were a lot of eyes following her. Human eyes. She was 100% visible. And these humans wouldn't stay complacent for long. The spirit never did. Containment was the issue. She raised her empty palms, a gesture of peace. "Scusatemi tutti," she said, the language flowing easily from her tongue. The Italians, ever graceful, muttered that it was nothing. Holly reached slowly into her pocket and withdrew a small spear. She placed it in the middle of the floor. "Guardate," she said. "Look." A restaurant patrons complied, leaning to see the small silver ball. It was ticking, faster and faster, almost like a countdown. Holly turned her back to the spear. 3, 2, 1. Boom! Flash! Mass unconsciousness. Nothing fatal, but headaches all around in about 40 minutes. Holly sighed. Safe for the moment. She ran to the door and slid the latch across. Nobody was going in or out, except through the big gaping hole in the wall. Next, she doused the smoldering troll with a content of restaurant's fire extinguisher, hoping the icy powder wouldn't revive the sleeping behemoth. Holly surveyed the mess she had created. There was no doubt it was in shambles. Worse than Hamburg. Ruth would skin her alive. She would rather face the troll any day. This was the end of her career for sure, but suddenly that didn't seem so important because her ribs were itching and she had a blinder of a pressure headache coming on. Perhaps a rest, just for a second, so she could pull herself together before retrieval shows up. Holly didn't even bother looking for a chair. She simply allowed her legs to buckle beneath her, sinking to the chessboard linoleum floor. Waking up to Commander Ruth's bulging features is the stuff of nightmares. Holly's eyes flickered open, and for a second she could have sworn that there was concern in those eyes, but then it was gone, replaced by a customary vein-popping fury. Captain Short! He roared, mindless of her headache. What in the name of sanity happened here? Holly rose shakily to her feet. The sentence just wouldn't come. You disobeyed a direct order. I told you to hang back. You know it's forbidden to enter a human building without an invitation. Holly shook the shadows from her vision. I got invited in. A child called for help. You're on shaky ground, Herr Short. There is present, sir. Corporal Rowe versus the state. The jury ruled that the trapped woman's cry for help could be accepted as an invitation into the building. Anyway, you're all here now. That means you've accepted the invitation too. Said Rod doubtfully. I suppose you were lucky. Things could have been worse. Holly looked around. Things couldn't have been a lot worse. The establishment was pretty trashed, and there were 40 humans out for the count. The tech boys were attaching mind wipe electrodes to the temples of unconscious diners. We managed to secure the area in spite of half the town hammering on the door. What about the hall? Ruth smirked. See for yourself. Holly glanced over. Retrieval had jimmied a hologram led into the existing electricity sockets and were projecting an unbattered wall over the hall. The holograms were handy for quick patches, but no good under scrutiny. Anyone who examined the wall too closely would have noticed that the slightly transparent patch was exactly the same as the stretch beside it. In this case, there were two identical patches of spiderweb cracks and two reproductions of the same Rembrandt. But the people inside the pizzeria were in no condition to examine walls, and by the time they woke up, the wall would have been repaired by a telekinetic division, and the entire paranormal experience would be removed from their memories. A retrieval officer bolted from the restroom. Commander! Yes, Sergeant? There is humans in there, sir. The concert didn't reach him. He's coming, sir. Right now, sir. Shields! Barked Ruth. Everyone! Holly tried. She really did. But it wouldn't come. Her magic was gone. A toddler waddled out of the bathroom, his eyes heavy with sleep. He pointed a pudgy finger directly at Holly. Ciao, Violetta, he said, before climbing into his father's lap to continue his snooze. Ruth shimmered back into the visible spectrum. He was, if possible, even angrier than before. What happened to your shield, Short? Holly swallowed. Stress, Commander? She offered hopefully. Ruth wasn't having any of it. You lied to me, Captain. You're not running hot at all, are you? Holly shook her head mutely. How long since you completed the ritual? Holly chewed her lip. I'd say about 4 years, sir. Ruth nearly popped a vein. 4 years? It's a wonder you lasted this long. Do it now. Tonight. You're not coming below ground again without your powers. You're a danger to yourself and your fellow officers. Yes, sir. Get a set of hummingbirds from Retrieval and zip across to the old country. There's a full moon tonight. Yes, sir. And don't think I've forgotten about these shambles. We will talk about it when you get back. Yes, sir. Very good, sir. Holly turned to go, but Rod cleared his throat for attention. Oh, and Captain Short. Yes, sir? Rod's face had lost its purple tint. He almost seemed embarrassed. Well done on the life-saving thing. Could have been worse. An awful lot worse. Holly beamed behind her visor. Perhaps she wouldn't be kicked out of Recon after all. Thank you, sir. Rod grunted. His complexion returned to its normal ruddy hue. Now get out here! And don't come back until you're full to the tips of your ears with magic. Holly sighed. So much for gratitude. Yes, sir. On my way, sir. That was a long chapter. That was a very long chapter. No, I guess I should have expected that. I'm so exhausted. But we got through basically 3 chapters. And there's 6 more to go. And so I guess that's not the last stream. And since we are concluding the stream, it is time for the announcements. And yes, we concluding the stream. I really don't have the strength to continue at this point. I'm just too tired. So, this is the last stream for this week. And on tomorrow, I will be posting a schedule for upcoming streams. There will be at least 2 streams. One on the next Saturday, where we will be continuing to read Artemis Fowl. Hopefully, we will be able to clear chapters from 4 to 6. It will be same time, because I'm really doubtful that the issue with viewers count was the hour I selected. Clearly someone finds me, at least bots do, which I'm still not very enjoying of. So, and there will be another stream. The stream will be on Tuesday, and we will be playing Catty and Betty, the game by Mothership. Yeah, I forgot the full name. Sorry. Catty and Betty, the Spirit Guide. That's the full name of the game. It's a small indie game, supposedly. A puzzle with a story telling about 2 friends, a cat Catty and a bat Betty, by the person who created somewhat famous Half-Quake trilogy, Half-Life mod, which was very special. I will say I haven't played it personally, but I have memories of it from my dark god counterpart, from my father. And by these memories, the entire trilogy was a huge influence to him, but, well, I'm not sure I can expect something for myself, considering that he is basically a dark god. But I know of Vtuber by Mothership, and so I am familiar with Katy and Betty, and I expect a really nice and sweet game to stream. So, on a Tuesday there will be an announcement. Well, not on a Tuesday, but an announcement nonetheless. And so I'm hoping to see you there. Most likely there will be also third stream on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? On a Thursday. Probably on Thursday. But I still haven't decided what it will be. What will be the contents of the stream. So I still have one day to decide, and you will see an announcement for a full week schedule tomorrow. In probably 24 hours when I prepare it. So for that, please follow my Twitter, or as usual, subscribe to Twitch or my YouTube channel. So you will be notified on my streams whenever I go live. And until then, I wish you to have a good day, and goodbye.